Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Solid Blue Sister, and this is my turn to talk. Today, we are going to talk about how do or what do white people really think about Black Lives Matter. And as you can see, I said hopefully this show will be a respectful and honest discussion on how white people feel about Black Lives Matter. Are they or are you for or against it? And I'm also going to say, what do Black people feel about Black Lives Matter? So, a couple of things have happened, over the past year. As we all know, we've been in the middle of a pandemic, and last summer we had a summer of unrest um, where Black Lives Matter played a prominent part in a lot of protests. Um, Most of them were peaceful. You do have those outliers who, will take it to another level. But a lot of it was derived from uh, the murder of George Floyd. So, a recent Pew Research study that was released back in June of 2017, showed that Black and white America have profoundly different views on race and inequality. Now, being an African American woman and having had countless um, conversations with white people, with Latinos, with Asians, over the years, um, there is a huge difference. And again, this Pew research was done in 2017. And the study involved 3,769 adults. 1,799 were white, 1,004 were blacks, and 604 Hispanics. And it was conducted between February 29th through May 8th of 2017. Now, this is 2021. I am quoting um, old stats, but um, just to give you an idea that the results show how much Black and white America are worlds apart when it comes to achieving equality. Black respondents see it as an elusive goal. Okay, so why would Black respondents see equality? Why would achieving equality? Why would Black Americans see it, people of African descent? Why would they see it as an elusive goal where white America just sees it as, well, if you work hard, you should be able to do, achieve your dream, blah, 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 blah. Well, let's look at that. Let's break that down. Okay, so you have white people who work very hard and they never seem to, you know, get that American dream, if you want to call it. You still have a lot of white people that struggle, who work very hard. Um, you have Latinos who struggle, who work very hard, and they, you know, continue to, you know, um, struggle. You have Black people who work very hard, you know, um, and continue to struggle. So I've always, had to look twice or kind of, like, really, you really think that if you work really hard, then, if Black people work really hard, then they'll have the same opportunities as white people. Hmm. Well, as I just said, that you have white people who work very hard and they continue to struggle. So okay, so on that aspect, it's about the same. But when you look at opportunity. When you look at when someone shows up for that job interview, or someone shows up to rent that apartment, or they want to purchase that home, the first thing that they see when a person of color walks up is the color of their skin. They see the color of their skin. I mean, that's a fact. That is that's what they see. Okay. Um, I could be gay. I could be a serial killer. Um, I could, beat my kids, abuse my parents, elder abuse. But the first thing they're going to see is the color of my skin. Whereas when a white person walks up to rent that apartment, buy that home, for that job interview, the first thing that they're going to see is that person's white. They're not going to see whether or not that person's gay, whether or not they are elder abuse, or they beat their children, or abuse their animals. They're not going to see that. The first thing they're going to see is that that person is white. So you have a white person walking through the door, and you have a black person walking through the door. Human nature, um, it kicks into your head. You are going to have that little light bulb that goes off, you know, um, in your head, where you're going to possibly look at that person of color in a more negative way than you would look at that white person. Neither one of them have opened their mouth yet. Neither one of them, you haven't seen their resume. You haven't seen anything. The first thing you see is that first impression. And what do they say? First impressions are lasting. Okay? I could lie about whether or not I'm gay or straight. I could lie whether or not, I'm married or not married, or, you know, um, uh, I beat my kids, beat my dog or whatever. But I can't lie about the color of my skin. So, having said that, um, Black Lives Matter was formed, um, back in 2000. It was actually formed back around 2011, but it started to gain steam probably around 2015 or so. And, you know, when you have the killings and murders of unarmed African Americans, mostly men, where, with Walter Scott in South Carolina, he was shot in the back. Okay, he was running away from the police officer. He was no threat. He was running away, but yet he was shot in the back. Um, let's let's go back to 1991. Let's talk about Rodney King. And once again, you have African American man who was in a high speed chase. And when they finally got Rodney King out of the car, you look at this and you see that they just start beating them with their batons. He was down. He was down. He had surrendered. There was no fight left in him. If anything, he was trying to cover his face. But they kept beating him and beating him and beating him 55 times. Four police officers beat Rodney King 55 times. Um, and then you had the unrest in Los Angeles. So you look at this, and one of the first things that Black people tend to say is, well, if they were white, would this had happened? If they were white, would they have done this? If they were white, would they have done that? For the most part, most Black people think the answer is no. No, they would not have, you know, treated this white person the same way they treated this Black person. If Rodney King were white, no, I don't think that he would have taken the beating that he did if George Floyd were white, no, I don't think that Derek Chauvin would have had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds if he even had his knee on George Floyd's neck if George Floyd were white. Would his knee have even been on his neck? Would it have gotten to that point? Now, again, you look at video, and some people can say, "Oh, they doctored the video. They did this. They did that." No, no, that they didn't. No, they didn't. Um, this is what happened, and when you have something like Black Lives Matter, it wasn't that we were just saying that other lives don't matter. Black Lives Matter is saying Black Lives Matter too. Okay? Yes, I hear about the Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, and that's one thing that some white people I hear them say is all lives matter, and I hear some black people say all lives matter. But it's missing the point, or do you see the point? You just don't want to acknowledge the point. Um, Black Lives Matter too. So this is my fourth day on the air on Podbean, and I was really hoping to get some input from white people because I really would like to know what they think about Black Lives Matter. I mean, do they think that Black Lives Matter is just a gang, that they're violent? Um, you know, Black Lives Matter was blamed for the insurrection on January 6th. Black Lives Matter was nowhere to be found. And if Black Lives Matter had done on January 6th what some white people did on January 6th, Black Lives Matter protesters, if they were black, never would have even have gotten to the Capitol steps. They more than likely would have been shot, dead, you know, and arrested the same day. You know, um, I am an African American. I am married to an African American, and I have an African American son. And yes, I feel our lives matter. We are black, and Black Lives Matter. Our lives matter too. But it's interesting when people say Blue Lives Matter. You had police officers at the on January 6th who were beating up other police officers. How does that happen? If Blue Lives Matter, why are you not? Why would you hurt one of your own? Um, I don't know. I don't know. It's very interesting when you hear just the difference in terms of how each ethnic group, when I say each ethnic group, I'm talking about black people and white people, see Black Lives Matter. Um, Most black and white Americans are aware of Black Lives Matter, but have mixed views on their support and assessment of the movement. Um, Black Lives Matter is a movement that formed in 2011, 2012, and led by young black activists who demand, and yes, demand justice and are fighting against police killings of black men and women. Um, However, you have white and black people who harbor um, mixed feelings about the movement's impact and success. Okay, so let's go back to the Pew study. Let's go back to the Pew study. So, again, this study done in 2017, according to the study, around 65% of Black people show support for Black Lives Matter, while some, around 31%, and mostly those with bachelor's degrees or more, remain skeptical over how effective the movement will be in helping to bring about equality. Again, study was done in 2017. So now let's fast forward to 2020. We saw an increased support of Black Lives Matter, um, mainly after George Floyd. And that whole summer, we had Breonna Taylor, um, you know, a young woman who, the police officers barged into the wrong house. And Breonna Taylor, they shot her and she was asleep. There's never been an apology from the police department. Never. And her family is still seeking justice for her. You know, um, you have Ronald Green back in 2019. Once again, if it weren't for the video, people would say it didn't happen. People would believe what the law enforcement, wrote. Louisiana state troopers. Yes, Ronald Green was in a high speed chase, but he stopped. He gave himself up, and they proceeded to beat Ronald Green to death to the point where they were wiping blood. The police officers were wiping blood off of themselves and making jokes like, I hope he doesn't have AIDS. Now, not only did they beat Ronald Green to death, but they tased him. They dragged his lifeless body across the pavement. All of this is on tape. This is the Louisiana state troopers. And they send this man to the hospital, dead on a gurney, with two prongs from the taser sticking out of his back. And in their report, they said that he sustained his injuries from crashing his car into a tree. Now the doctor on call said, "Well, no, this was homicide. These injuries were not sustained by a car accident." Then you see a picture of Ronald Green's car. There is no way that this car ran into a tree. Okay, it was, yes, it had a couple of scratches, but not, where bam, you run into a tree. Also, if he ran into a tree, how did he get two taser prongs hanging out of his back if he died and sustained injuries from running into a tree? So did Ronald Green run into the tree and then while he was dying, you went and tased him in his back? Is that what happened? Why do you have so much blood on you? Well, the videotape show exactly what happened to Ronald Green. So again, I question: if Ronald Green were white, would that have happened to him? So again, I ask, what do white people really think about Black Lives Matter? I don't know. Um, about 4 in 10 Black adults strongly support Black Lives Matter. Do they understand goals of Black Lives Matter very well? 12% of whites say yes. 33% of blacks, again in 2017, said that they understand. Um, you know, if Black Lives Matter were run by the same activists, but they were called another name other than Black Lives Matter, would people be so down on it? But because you have those two words, black and lives, is that one reason why people uh, don't support it as much? I mean, you look at what Black Lives Matter is doing now in the 21st century, and you look at the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Is it any different? It is. Both of them have peaceful protests. But I think the difference here is you have the younger people of today are not willing to turn the other cheek. They're not willing to say, they're not willing to just accept it and take this as status quo. They're willing to fight a little harder than Martin Luther King did, and even a little harder than Malcolm X. You know, Malcolm X wasn't violent. He had led peaceful protests. What white people didn't like about Malcolm X was what he said. And Malcolm X spoke a lot of truth. So if Black Lives Matter were called something else, do you think that white America would be more accepting of it? Or even not accepting, that they would just be more tolerant? I guess that's the word that I should use. That white America would be more tolerant of Black Lives Matter. And even of, of black people, the ones who still don't support it 100%. Do you think that if it was, called something else, but when you have black and lives, even when you just have see the word black and people, to white America, that's threatening. They see our skin as a weapon. Oh my goodness, here comes a black man walking down the street. He's automatically gonna, hurt you or rape you or beat you up or rob you, whatever. When you know you see what's going on now, is so you have these white gangs. They want to say Black Lives Matter is a gang. I'm going to say, white gangs, like your, Proud Boys, you know, um, who do want to hurt, who do want to hurt people. So again, I say if Black Lives Matter was called something else, would white people be more tolerant of the organization? Um, I am old school, and I will admit when Black Lives Matter first started, um, I wasn't, I didn't really understand what they were trying to do, what they were trying to say. Okay, when I say I'm old school, I grew up, learning about Martin Luther King. My parents, marched with Martin Luther King. Um, you know, let's stay peaceful. While they're sicking attack dogs on you, and the firemen are shooting you with water hoses. But today's group of kids, especially the millennials and your Gen Zs, they're not putting up with that. They're willing to face you in the street. They're willing to say, no, you're not going to treat me like this. You're not going to treat me less than. So I don't know. You go back and you have black people believe that institutional racism is a critical problem, while more white people say individual instances of discrimination are a bigger concern. Okay, so individual instances and institutional racism. Okay, so those are two different things, and you have two different views. Uh, we have an overwhelming number of white people, 66%, say that individual instances of discrimination in America are a bigger problem than institutional racism, while only 19% of white people feel the latter is a larger concern. That's interesting. However, the black opinion is more evenly divided, 48% and 40%. So 48% that feel that um, uh, individual instances of discrimination in America are a bigger problem, and 40% say that institutional racism is a bigger problem. So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. 48% of Black people say that institutional racism is a bigger problem, and 40% of Black people think that individual discrimination in America is a bigger problem. Um, but they all think, all Black people feel that it has an effect on Black men and women who feel and believe that they are treated less fairly than whites in dealing with the police. Okay, so 84% of Black people feel that they are treated less fairly than whites in dealing with the police. Um, when applying for loans, 66%. In the workplace, 64%. 49% that they're treated differently in stores and restaurants. And when voting is 43%. So again, this research was done in 2017. I would be interested to know how that percentage would change with the new voting laws that are sweeping the country, that are restrictive towards people of color, mainly Black people. Um, but 43% is still high. 43% of African Americans, 43% of Blacks, African descent, feel that they're treated less fairly when it comes to voting. Why is that? And most of the places where they feel this is in the South. Again, why is that? Is that because of slavery? That the South never got over slavery? I mean, I don't know. I was having a conversation today with someone where we were talking about how, even to this day, you go down south and you have white people who are still calling, grown men and women gal and boy. Hey, boy. Hey, or you gal. There's no respect there. None. Now you come up north or you go out west and someone said boy or gal, they're gonna look at you sideways and you better think twice before you say that. So is it the fact that the white just has never gotten over slavery? I mean, what is it? I had a white teacher call my son boy when he was in third grade. After I had a talk with her, I guarantee you she never did it again. Ever. At least not to my son. He has a name, you know? Just like I have gone places where I've been with white friends and we go somewhere and they're Miss So and so, Mrs. So and so, but when it gets to me, they want to call me by my first name. And I had to check them. And they knew what they were doing. Their face turns red. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I called them out on it. My white friends were like, well, what's the big deal? Either they knew it and they chose to overlook it or they truly didn't know. But I knew it. I knew what they did. One thing that white people don't understand, and this is again my opinion, is that there are a lot of times where Black people go places and we're the only one. We're the only one in the room. Be it a classroom, be it when you're shopping, be it, even when you're driving on the freeway, highway, expressway, whatever it is, where you live, and you're driving along and you look up and you look into, cars, whatever, passing by, and you're the only, person of color. Or you walk into a store, you could be traveling and you walk into a store, you're stopping to get gas or whatever, and you walk into the store and everybody literally silence. That has happened to me. All eyes are on you. And I always think, like, are you really this ignorant that you've never seen a Black person before? And some of them haven't. More Black people, like my opinion, have been exposed to white people more so than they've been exposed to us. I think this is true. You know, you have more black people are in positions where we have to deal with people of other races, not just white people, where we're dealing with Hispanics or Latinos, where we're dealing with Asians. You know, we're in the position where we have to deal with that. You know, we have to deal with other races. Um, Whereas for a lot of times, you know, other races don't leave their neighborhoods. So when you look at something like Black Lives Matter, are you just seeing this black gang? Is that what you see? This black gang who's coming to invade and protest, you know, in your city and what have you? Or are you seeing people who truly are trying to have a peaceful protest in order to be included, in order to have respect, in order to have a place at the table? You know, you look back at the history of America, and even though, you know, conservatives are doing their best to try to erase history, you can't. I've said it on some of my previous shows. In history, wherever you go, more than likely, you're going to trip over one of us. As much as you want to erase history, we are there. Yes, if you were slave owners, if your family owned slaves, there's a very high possibility that they raped slave women, black women, and had babies with them. So, you know, this is one thing that Thomas Jefferson's family just couldn't get over for a very long time. You have black people in your family because he consistently raped Sally Hemings, had 8 or 9 children with her. He raped her. And yes, she was 14 years old when he began to rape her. That wasn't love. He didn't love her. He was raping her. So when you look at this history of this country, and not just about, you know, African Americans or people of African descent, let's look at Native Americans. Look at what was done to them. They were raped. You know, they go to these missionary schools because you all are savages and we have to teach you about God. We have to teach you about God. But these God fearing people were raping the girls, sometimes as young as 10, mistreating them, taking their land away from them. You know, in the movies, it was always the Indians who were, you know, the bad people, and the white man was always, you know, the good people. Yes, we finally killed the Indians. Yes, hooray! Now we can finish our trek across, you know, the west with our wagon train to California or wherever they were going. But we survived against those bad Indians. Really? So again, you look back at all of this. It's like, yes, Black Lives Matter, but Native American lives matter too. But it seems like in America, the only lives that seem to take president, excuse me, is white. White lives matter. I mean, there is a man running for in Kansas in the school district, running for a place in the school district that only wants to have a white America. That's what he wants. He wants a white America. That's not going to happen. His name is Josh Wells, a Hutchinson area man with Proud Boys and other right wing extremist ties. Is this is nostalgic for the good old days when the U.S. was a pro-white country with a protected white majority. He wants a pro-right country with a protected white majority. This man is running for the Kansas School Board. So that means if you have people of color sending their children to school and he is on the school board, this is what they're dealing with. A protected white majority. What does that mean? That white lives matter? Yeah, white lives matter. But black lives matter too. And the way this country is structured, white people never have to carry around a sign saying white lives matter because American society, we already know that. We already know that white lives matter according to American society. You let us know every single day, be it on the news, even with your liberal media, it is known. Be it in a commercial, be it with some of the things that you say, some of the stereotypes, the way America is structured, it is structured where white lives matter. So you don't have to tell us that. But black lives matter too. Um, and I, also look at these so-called Christians who want to preach the word of God, but they preach division. Let's go back to missionaries when missionaries wanted to, teach the heathen Chinese, that they're praying to Buddha or whoever Chinese people pray to, or whomever Indians pray to, or even African Americans. You always had those missionaries who wanted to come in and say, you know, our God is the best God. You better do this. But they were so abusive to their converts. And I'm going to go back to rape. There were missionaries raped a lot of women. They didn't rape white women. They weren't raping their sons and daughters. Their other missionary, their friends, sons and daughters. White women. Or white girls and white boys or whatever. They weren't abusing them. They were abusing Native Americans. They were abusing Chinese. They were abusing Latinos. They were abusing black people. So these are the lives that matter. So I know all lives matter. I don't, I really don't want to hear that all lives matter. We already know all lives matter. But do you know all lives matter? There's one particular person who always uses the term. She would come on my Zoom show, and she would always use the term these nouveau woke white people, and it's like they're woke when they want to be, but then when it gets a little uncomfortable, they go back into, well, we're gonna go stand over here. You all can stay over there, but we're gonna stand over here. I don't know. I don't know. Um, where we are in this country, we are just at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads with racial equality. We are at a crossroads with race relations, um, hurting America as a whole. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, will there always be a chasm between black and white in America? I think the answer is yes. I mean, at least in my lifetime, I don't think it'll change because white America won't let it change. They won't. Not when you have someone like Josh Wells, who wants a pro white country with a protected white majority. When you have people like that, how can it change? I don't think that it can. America won't have the opportunity to change. I mean, it is a fact that black people experience this discrimination at a much higher rate than white people. And if white people say that that's not true, oh, okay. That's something that, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Racial gaps persist when it comes to household income and poverty. I mean, that is a fact. So, I don't know. When they say no justice, no peace, well, black folks haven't had peace for a very, very long time. And for the justice that we do receive, we usually have to fight for it. So, unfortunately, I did not have, white people join this discussion as I had hoped. Um, but hopefully, when you listen to this, you can give me your feedback. But that's all I got today, folks. And hopefully, one day we can all get along, but I don't think that is going to happen in my lifetime. So, with that, I am Solid Blue Sister. Please speak your truth, and I will see you next time. Thank you.